Hello.
Hi.
And welcome to another edition of
Bonding over bacon. And despite us not having bacon in our hands today,
Not this time, no.
we're going to take you to another level with a more personal episode. Not that any of our episodes aren't particularly personal, but this one,
A little
we're
bit more
talking
intimate.
about marriage.
Yes, we are. And there's a special reason for that.
Yes.
We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. So we figured it would be very fitting to articulate and share with you all the 10 things we've learned over the last 10 years of our marriage.
Yes, the top 10, although there's many things
There's
we've
many
learned.
of them. Yeah, there's a lot that we've learned. Especially having a Bambino and a dog.
Yeah.
You know, there's a
And
lot that
two
we've learned.
businesses and being entrepreneurs. And we could probably break down each one of these and make them their own episode. So if you're interested in
Good
that, let us
point.
know.
Good point.
But we're going to try to encapsulate some of the biggest lessons, the biggest things that we've learned over being together, married.
Married, right.
Together for 20 years.
Yeah.
If you could believe it. Married for 10.
I'm still alive. I'm still here.
That's what they say.
Yes.
All right. So without further ado, let's kick off with number 1.
Yeah, and there's no ranking order of like one
Yeah.
top thing. They all are extremely relevant. But what came to top of mind, we're just gonna knock it out in that
And
order.
through the lens of like who we are as coaches, who we've become, and where we're kind of going with our life. And
Yeah.
so these are like pretty serious nuggets, but really good
Foundational.
ones that we feel have really transformed our relationship and our bond and have us in a place at 10 years we didn't think we would be.
I
But,
agree.
you know, thankfully for the better, right? Would
I
you say?
agree. Absolutely,
All right, cool.
1000%.
I told him to say that.
The QR code, yeah,
Right.
the card says. So the first one that comes to our mind is what we did fairly early on in our relationship was establish a healthy financial communication habit. It was something that was important to us, especially as we were planning for our wedding. That's where I feel like we both elevated our awareness around our personal finances. It borderline inspired me to go into finance. It was actually that following year that I embarked in my own financial journey as an advisor. Yeah, just being transparent and aware of where the money's coming in, where the money's got to go, and organizing our lifestyle in that fashion was pretty important early on.
Yeah, I mean, I know
It still is,
we
yeah.
did it for the sake of like our immediate goals at the time. So, you know, it was moving into our apartment and budgeting our lifestyle, and then it was after getting engaged, it was saving up for the wedding and everything that comes along with that. But those were foundational skills that we weren't like told to do.
Yeah.
We weren't really given any advice. We figured it out by doing it and by trial and error, like how we're going to save for things. And thankfully, 10 years later, I have to say those habits, that communication has really served us well to stay on task with our financial goals,
Plan ahead.
to be transparent about, you know, where we're spending and why, and having that full openness about what we're doing with our money and where we're going with that, because finances are a huge piece of
yeah.
a relationship, and they could make or break a relationship sometimes. So having, you know, our past be what it was and where we came from, what we understood about money based on our upbringing or our own personal experiences, and then molding that together to create that trust and that vision for our own life financially really served us well. And those habits of touching in at least twice a month.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we're
The first
really
and the second
aggressively
weekend.
attacking debt or saving for something big, we're talking every week. We're talking every day.
Monitoring it,
And
yeah.
we set the time to do so. And we find ways that, you know, we found that those habits have really served us and our financial health, but also our marriage, our marital health as well.
Well, I think the important key there too, and that goes, I would want to say for every relationship, is to not be afraid of facing a difficult scenario. So if there is a family that runs into a lot of debt, we did, you know, at some point, and those conversations were pretty hard to go through. We didn't want to face it, but we had to face it together in order to get over that hump and get through the other side, identify solutions, work them out together. And at the end of it all, like, our bond just grew stronger. We had some perspectives that were different, but at the end of the day, we wanted the same outcome. Like, that, I think, to us was a very important step, was that the goal was very clear. This is what we wanted, whether it was circumstantial or just a lifestyle adjustment that we agreed, all right, this is what we want. All right, now let's come to the right ideas on how to get there with that goal in mind, and not feeling one person's idea is more important or we have to go based on their idea over the other. It was, hey, what's the best way for us to achieve that particular goal and lifestyle?
Yeah, and early on, which is something that I wasn't used to in my upbringing or in my past, fully combining incomes and accounts and being fully open and transparent. This is not one size fits all, and this is not financial advice. For that, we'll have to set a meeting with him privately. But, we've seen couples that have lived a very separate financial life, and that separateness can create more separateness, and that separate mindsets can create separate behaviors. Not always, and there's multitude of circumstances, but by and large, especially what I've seen as a life coach as well, when you think separate, you can over time become separate and less together. And so early on, that was really hard for me in our relationship, to combine everything and just have this big pool of teaming. But that added, like you had mentioned prior, and you'll see a common theme on some of these as we get going, having that open communication, understanding how to communicate better as a team, not an adversary. Of course, you're married. You are the most important team to each other. Oh. And that perspective helped, heal a lot of those mindsets that I had coming into our marriage, and has served us really well, as I had mentioned. But also seeing how sometimes that never gets accomplished in a relationship and in a marriage. And over time, it can create some real big problems with separate accounts or hidden accounts, or you have to fund this and I have to fund that. Yeah. When you share a life, there is a degree of togetherness that is helpful. Yeah. So that's you're in
the trenches together, and you're also, living it up together. That was our mindset.
Yep.
That was an important one.
We spent a lot of extra time on that, but money is a very logical thing, but it has a very strong emotional tie. Totally. And it's all based on our perceptions and our experiences. So that's a big one. And it's a complicated web, but we've really found what works for us, and we're grateful for it, because it's really helped our goal planning financially and with our lifestyle and everything.
Agree. The second thing that we've learned over the last 10 years of marriage is this concept of the 80-20 rule. So it's a common business principle where 80% of your business's profits or revenue may come from 20% of your clients. So that idea is something that I kind of brought up when thinking about this particular conversation we went through all with Chelsea. Was like, in every relationship, your spouse or your significant other may not have everything that you really want, but they may fill a large bucket of what it is that you desire. Or the fact of the matter is 80% of what they fill are things that you truly are grateful for. And the biggest thing that I have seen, thinking about, before marrying Chelsea, was that some of the guy friends that I have were seeking that 20% that their significant other didn't fill. Now, there are certain things that clearly, if Chelsea was a drug dealer, if Chelsea was, a thief or a robber, right,
or doing something really bad.
And that was that 20% that, although she was like a great cook and a great person to me and all that jazz, like, no.
You have to weigh it.
You'd have to obviously weigh that option. Yeah. She's not kidnapping puppies from, a local pet center. So,
it's not that bad. I don't know.
If you brought him home to me to pet, then maybe, I would look at that as a gift. But no, the theme is looking at, be grateful of the person that you are around.
Yeah.
Remember why you love them. and bring that to the forefront,
Yeah.
And I feel that as our perspective was always in the forefront of like, what is it that she loves about me? What is it that I love about her? And as long as we kept that in our forefront, we saw more of that in our day-to-day life.
Well, you attract more of what you focus on. So when you focus on the 20% or the nitpicky things that bother you, everything is going to bother you because that's all you're going to see.
Yeah, that's all you're
and
gonna
then
notice.
you, in light of kind of nitpicking or picking apart those negative things, your partner, your spouse is going to be upset and
carry that
clearly
on a day-to-day basis.
React in a way that you don't want to see, that they don't want to feel, that you don't want to experience.
Right.
And so if you can focus on the things that you love about the person, if you can focus on the things that make them who you are, like make them who you love, right? Then you'll see more of that and they will become more of that.
So what you focus on, right, is what you will actually
when you
attract.
treat them as their best self, they show up that way. And challenge question to anyone who's kind of stuck in that, and it's extremely common. I was that person, admittedly, early on, until I realized that that's a broken formula and a recipe for disaster. Is, do you show up 100% the way you want to show up as an individual? No. I mean, we're not robots. We're not perfect, right? There are things about yourself that you would love to improve upon. So how can we project that onto someone else to say, you're not everything I want you to be when I'm not everything I want to be? And that was a big game changer in my mind to say, how can I show up better? And then I can be better, I can attract better, I can expect better, and then I will receive better. So what I focus on, instead of the 20% of things that drive me crazy about you, and I have
a song?
Quick tip, try to
things like that drive me crazy about you.
You're so funny. I would try to make a joke of it. See, if you make a joke of it, how bad can it really be?
Clearly, the sense of humor is part of that 80%.
Yes.
So I gotta keep it.
Yeah. But thinking about the ways that you can show up better instead of worrying about the ways that person isn't, showing up the way you want them to. Everyone does the best they can with the skills they have, but continue to improve on yourself, and your environment, your perspective will change.
Yeah.
But focus on. And another challenge, thought, or perspective on that is, if you seek the 20% you feel your partner is missing, because we're not 100% perfect, no one is, what other pieces will fall away? Like, what other negative traits might you trade off, right? Everything's a trade-off. So in trying to seek, those few things you wish you had in someone else, that person isn't going to, be they'll have other traits that might be weighted far worse, right? Mm-hmm. So, or trying to push your spouse to become all of that. What could fall away? And you got to weigh the importance and the weight of that. So.
And also, I would say, depending on what maybe that 20% or so that your spouse may not be offering or may not be bringing to the table, if it is something that is within their control to adjust or change, have that conversation.
Yeah.
But have it out of love and not out of, belittling them. It's, if you know that they have a specific potential, or it was something that they were providing perhaps in the beginning of the relationship that they over time died out, and not offering in that relationship, bring it up, as an opportunity to, strengthen that particular bond over something that, at one point made you feel really good in being in that relationship. And if that element of the relationship slowly died off, whether it was your spouse was more adventurous in the beginning, eager to go out and experiment, the world in various ways, and over time maybe didn't, became more of a homebody versus going out and, going on journeys. And that was something that you really loved, then raise that, bring that up,
right.
But out of a loving perspective,
Yeah.
and that will come across as, clearly something that
Right.
you yearn. And if your spouse, obviously cares for what it is that you're thinking and what your desires are.
Hello,
Stella.
Meet
Then
Stella.
perhaps there's a way for the two of you to both get what you want.
Right. explore it together, like in curiosity.
Exactly.
Right. So that's a good one.
Thanks.
Yes, the 80-20 rule.
All
Sorry.
right. Third one that we thought of was compromise is collaborative.
Not competitive.
Fair. So
we're two type A's, so in case you can't tell.
What I see from this particular lesson that we learned was that we both get what we want if the goal is to have a clean house, right? Does it really matter who is responsible? Yes, to a degree, but if we know that there is a circumstance that I know that she can't help or I'm too busy, that we fill in wherever needed, then, the objective is still met, in that sense.
And you're compromising in a marriage, again, going back to seeing yourself as a team, it's not a win-lose. I think a lot of people get caught up in,
proving your point.
Proving the point, having the argument, challenging the other person like they're an adversary, right? And it just doesn't work as a team. When you think about being on a sports team, you're not fighting your teammates for the ball, for example, old
Sure.
basketball analogy, whatever, right? You're not trying to take it away. You're trying to figure out how best to strategize to get to the common goal. So don't make it a hostage negotiation, don't make it a competition over who wins and who loses an argument, or furthermore with that, keeping score of the arguments or the decisions, right? You might have a difference of opinion, but maybe that person's perspective serves the situation better at that time versus you next time. You may have the better perspective that serves the situation, but let it be that. That's bringing two halves together to make a whole, functioning unit. So you may disagree on things, but don't make it a competition or that you have to lawyer them into deciding what you want.
Always having to prove a point really doesn't lead to, it may be a short-term dopamine, but long-term, that can lead to disaster. So
and if you're truly at an impasse, try to lovingly see their perspective through their eyes just for a second. You could do it in your own head or, take a break and readdress things. But when you don't have the same opinion on what you want to do or how you want to do it, what are ways that you can see it from the other person's perspective to decide if that makes sense? She really wants to be a part of this conversation.
Yeah, the next video.
Okay. Yeah, she'll be in the next one. All right, so that's a pretty straightforward one. Trying to be more collaborative, less, be more of a team than an adversary with your partner, with your spouse.
Yeah, that served us very well.
Yes. This one is interesting, and over the last, I'd say over the last 5 years, we've experienced a lot of this in our marriages. Hard seasons, right? Whether they're internal to us or something external that is affecting us in a certain way, affecting our family, affecting our extended family. Things happen in life. Lots of things happen. Things you can never guess or control for or plan for, right? But those seasons, I'll call them seasons, right? Sometimes it's acute and it only lasts a couple months or a week. Sometimes it could last a whole literal season, 3 months, a year, who knows, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, those seasons are, you're fighting with her. Yeah, be collaborative, really don't be competitive. No, just kidding. She's a dog. So but, those seasons are temporary even when they don't feel like they are, right? They could be a long season. It could be exhausting. You could lose sight of each other in those moments because you might be in some form of survival or just getting through, right? And or emotionally going through a hard time as an individual that, yes, the whole family feels at some point, or, your spouse feels with you, but differently, right? And how best to show up in those seasons, because those actions you take during those seasons where maybe you're not seeing eye to eye or you're having real trouble and struggle. And like I said, whether they're internal to the marriage or external that's affecting the marriage, those decisions you make are permanent, and those actions will have consequences. So how best can you show up during that time to see that, when the season passes, is it are you still on good grounds? Are you still in, proper footing with each other? Can you get to that place again? Like just letting the dust settle to assess the situation rather than making, broad sweeping decisions in the midst of crisis. As best as you can, try to help support each other and be there as best you can. And if you're the ones creating the problem, well, like try your best to show up as you need to, but know that every hard season passes. And you can come out on the other side of those seasons better and stronger and more connected if you know how to look inwards towards each other than look out, or to assume that everything is over and you're just throwing your hands up and saying, that's it, I'm done. Of course, this is all just...
This for...
in general.
Reflecting,
right.
But it's also reflecting our last, 10 years, what we've come across as... Hey, we experience seasons of challenges, whether it be internal or external, things that we had to deal with, and it obviously bogged us down emotionally. Loss and
grief, financial setback, job loss or changes, illness in the family, emergencies that happen, things that happen, with your children, right? Crises that happen with your children, like... It's not always sunshine and rainbows, but how can you see your marriage through that season and see when the dust settles, like where you're at, and assess where you want to be. And hopefully that's still together and not, I got to throw in the towel. That's it. It's over. There is life on the other side of those tough seasons. So how can you best show up to be there for each other on the other side? Yeah. That's been, a huge part of what we've learned in resiliency of our bond and our relationship, and how we get there is in some of the next few answers. But being a team and being friends and being there for each other, understanding what we're feeling has really helped us get through those seasons and through the other side of it.
Big time.
Yeah.
It's great.
All right.
Fifth one. All right. We're halfway there. Forgiveness means you've healed from the situation and you do not bring it up again in a later argument.
I love how you were the one to say that.
Me too.
That was not planned. It was so perfect.
Me too.
Maybe these are my lessons. Yeah. Don't bring it up again.
Do you want to elaborate?
So remember those seasons we were talking about?
Yeah.
No. Obviously life happens and you get into disagreements and arguments, and some can be pretty intense, right? Nobody's perfect and everyone has emotions, and sometimes we deliver them in a way that isn't always pretty.
It was a growing, so I'll share my perspective on this particular topic. So it's part of the growth that we all have as humans that we hope to experience, emotional growth, maturity growth, our EQ, our ability to, build and enhance our perspective on the world and who it is that we're with. And so we've been together for 20 years. And so, the first 10 years we were dating, and, there were moments out of those 10 years, we lived apart for 3 of them. 3 years that we lived apart. And obviously we're trying to find each other while we're also growing ourselves and trying to find out who we are, at, young 20 some odd year olds. And so whenever there would be like a dispute or an argument or a disagreement, years later, those points would re-rise to the surface.
Resurrect themselves.
It would resurrect, yes. And catch me off guard. Like, whoa, where'd that come from? But it helped me understand that, the minute you understood when, okay, that clearly was a older version of Chelsea who, didn't see things the way that current Chelsea does. It just, to me, that is a symbol of, all right, there is a level of growth and, maturity, but also just strengthening your perspective on, all right, what do we really want? Like, what is the priority of the relationship? Is it to prove that point and to keep that, lingering throughout the rest of your relationship? Or is it a matter of saying, hey, we disagreed on that thing. We came to an agreement. We validated that we love each other, and we validated that through our ongoing actions. Therefore, is there really any benefit? Is it enriching to resurrect,
to bring it back,
things that really were minuscule to begin with, to then resurrect the emotions that really is what was tied to that instance, those instances.
Well, and it shows a lot that if you find yourself in those cycles, you haven't fully forgiven and released the situation. There's still something very present about whatever pain that gave you, that situation or that argument or whatever it is that you keep bringing up, and that you need to get curious in yourself on why that is, and show, like you were saying in your examples, the forgiveness was earned, and you have to understand that changed behavior helps contribute to trust and forgiveness.
Sure.
And a new perspective that you can build together when you disagree or when you argue over something. And if you keep bringing it up, it's still hanging on you. It's still in you somewhere, right? And that needs to be released. And that's a you thing, actually. That's not a them thing. Yes, change behavior and forgiveness can be earned, and it should be earned. Yeah. But the healing, so it doesn't come up again, that's your responsibility as an individual. And, I realized very early on that carrying unnecessary baggage of emotions that didn't serve me or you or the people that we grew into didn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. No. And it was exhausting. So why? Why do it? Like, keep your disagreements about the present moment and don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, please. Just work on the release and the forgiveness, and make sure you understand that forgiveness is earned and change behavior is the best form of an apology. And sometimes, depending on how tumultuous the situation is, speaking more as a life coach than personally, because we've always, gotten to a better place. So this isn't really applying to us, but, sometimes you don't get that apology. So how can you release that and forgive it and let it go so it doesn't hang on to you without getting that full-blown apology that you envision you receiving? You may not get it. It depends on the growth, the maturity, and the understanding of your partner. So it's a heavy one, but
that's a good point.
It needs to be said. I think it's important. That's why it wound up being on the list.
It's on the list.
It's on the list.
Very valid.
In light of that, here's another really good tidbit. We're getting into the heavy stuff now, man. These I promise you,
lessons, though. 7
through 8, I listed. It's a little more uplifting at the end. but these are really good.
But when everything is all hunky dory in a relationship, what are you learning in the good times?
Oh.
Other than to be freaking grateful. But
true.
But it's in the hard times that's where like the true growth and the learning comes from. It's like you learn more about yourself in those instances, how we handle it, how we react. I like that.
I was gonna say, high five. You should rewind that and listen to that again, because that was gold.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's. It makes sense. In the good times, clearly harvest those good times. Remember those good times. It's in those good times that will get you through those hard times. When you remind yourself, like, damn, I remember how good I felt when XYZ happened with Chelsea in my life. Like, do I really want to let that go in the short-sighted, situation that we may be embarking on? No, I don't want to release that. Like, I want to keep that.
I want to get back to that.
I want to get back to that.
How can we do that again?
Is what we're experiencing a season, And it's like, all right, then let's move beyond that, because what I want permanently is a long-term relationship of the good times.
Thanks, honey. I'm so glad to hear you say that.
Thanks.
All right. So, number 6.
Oh, yes.
Again, kind of argument-based, disagreement-based. Just like you don't want to resurrect the past disagreements and issues when you're having a present conversation, don't threaten the marriage in the heat of an argument. This sounds so simple, but I guarantee you some of you have had that situation. Oh my gosh, you cannot have your, finger on the eject button every single time you get into a disagreement.
Yeah. It's
God, this is so soul bearing.
It goes back to reobserving, what the reality of the situation is. Is it something that can be resolved with proper communication, with time, with, the understanding of what the bigger picture is? The bigger picture is, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. So why would I ever threaten that for a short-term, feeling of emotional, like in an argument?
Right.
Why would I ever jeopardize something that I truly want for something that's short-term and more or less probably not even very significant?
Yeah. Couple tips and perspectives on that is like, also don't cry wolf either. Like, the boy who cried wolf, and when he finally was being attacked, no one came to his rescue. It's like, don't threaten things over the minutia, because if it ever comes to the point where you have something serious that you need to take a break or possibly put those cards on the table, you want to be taken seriously in that moment. Like, weigh the decisions.
Like, it's a serious decision.
And how does that erode your bond and your relationship if that's your go-to? So secondly to that, and again, these are all super early on lessons, nothing that's happening currently, but learn new communication skills. So you might be extremely upset. You might be livid and totally enraged. Learn new words to express that rage. Yeah. Learn new words, right? Yeah. If your only words are, I want to go, I want to split, you've clearly don't have a high EQ, quite honestly.
Or that's all that you're thinking of. Maybe
right. Or
didn't want the relationship to begin
right,
with.
That's true. Are you saying something without saying something?
Is your subconscious mind speaking for you?
Yeah.
Because that's what you'd be carrying on a daily basis.
That's true.
It's something you may have to question yourself if that's where you go to. If that's your go-to,
Yeah, get curious about that one. Whether it's a thing that you never really wanted in the first place, or you just need to find new language around expressing your concern, your frustration.
But we've learned to never go there unless it's truly how someone feels. But
which is
you'll never
not going to happen.
Yeah.
What'd you just say?
I said you'll never get that from me.
Oh, okay, right. You're right. And if you find yourself constantly fighting or saying these really aggressive things without articulating how you really feel, you're kind of like constantly in a war zone. You're living in a war zone where you're arguing, and you might want to explore why that is, how that is, and how sustainable that really is to the relationship. Because with every disagreement that's not handled in a healthy fashion, you tend to erode the bond for sure. And that bond is important, because that bond, like we said, is what bridges the gap between the peaks and the valleys.
Correct.
All right. Let's move on. That was a heavy one.
Yeah. That was important.
Yeah, it is.
7. So the next one, work on yourself. You can't control other people, or you really can't control the person that you're with.
Can't control your spouse.
Yeah.
Despite you trying. I'm not speaking from experience, please. This is enough. It's not about me.
Oh, hilarious.
This is just really good advice.
The key is, like, if you want the world around you to change, you have to change. It's as simple as that. Jim Rohn is a professional, or he had passed away, about 5 to 7 years ago, but he's a professional motivational speaker. I learned to love him, and one of the things that he said, in order for the world around you to change, you have to change. You can't expect others to change around you unless you do. And that's so true in our relationship, and that's, as we're sharing some of the things that we've learned, it's actually earlier on in our relationship. Over the first 5 years, a lot of what we had shared in the first 6 things that we learned were really in the beginning, as we were continuously adjusting this new lifestyle that we had. But the one thing that we agreed on was to continue to, emotionally grow. We've seen a massive difference in our spiritual growth, our emotional growth, not so much physical growth. Chelsea, I think, is the same height as she was in 6th grade.
Yeah. Fifth,
but what we have experienced is our perspective on the world around us, but also our immediate world, and our desire to not only be together, but to grow in ways that we had never, ever, ever thought we would have grown 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
No.
Like, we are very different people.
And our growth has not always happened at the same pace or at the same time. So trying to make sure you don't try to like pull back your spouse to, you subconsciously kind of, we already went into that. No, did we?
No, we didn't.
Oh, yeah. No, that is number 9. Ha. Well, see how there's a common theme here. But, instead of focusing like we talked about previously with the 80-20, right? You're focusing on those few things that really bother you and that you nitpick about. Well, what are turn the lens back on yourself. Like, what are the ways that you can grow and show up better? And therefore your environment and your perspective will change. Major golden rule. Easier said than done, but absolutely changes everything in your world. And not just your marriage, your relationship with your children, with your parents, with your friends, with basically everyone. When you learn those foundational tools of how to better and improve your communication skills, your emotional and social skills, how are you showing up best? And not trying to control, well, geez, I really wish that you'd be that person. Yeah. Well, I mean, you're basically projecting your own shortcomings onto your partner. How can you turn that lens back on yourself and do the work yourself?
Yeah. And be transformative. Like, if you want to transform your world.
Yeah.
And when I say world, I mean the people around you, your atmosphere, your Fab Five, like, if you want to change that environment, you personally have to transform into that, that person who can attract more of that behavior, more of those types of people, and if we're talking about your spouse, if there's something that, you would want to, experience with your spouse, then you have to come forward in a way that you're receiving it, and there's certain things that I purposely do to put you in a very bright light so that I can get, the best from you.
Right. Instead of nitpicking on the things that make your spouse feel worse, you do the things that make them feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm your morning barista.
Yes.
And you cook amazing dinners. And we show up in many other ways, but those are just some of the fun few things.
But ultimately, you can't want change for your spouse more than they want it themselves. Yeah. You can't control that person. Right. You can't tell them how to behave. You can't tell them how to behave. I can't tell you how many clients I've had and how many conversations I've had with people who always want to change something about someone else but won't look at what they can possibly do to move the needle in their own personal life. And sometimes even energetically, that's felt. Like, when you see your spouse improving and being better, subconsciously, like, you start to kind of want that too, right? And you'll kind of get on board with that, hopefully. And you'll see it kind of happen. And it's going to take time. And it's going to, be what it's going to be. But you can only change yourself and your perspective and your own life. And the hopes that that will change your environment around you, including possibly for the better your spouse and how they show up as well.
Great.
All right. Awesome.
The 8th lesson that we learned.
Yes.
When we are truly a team, traditional roles don't really play a part.
They don't.
That's very true.
We don't even talk like that or say,
I'm the man, you're doing dishes.
That.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I got a game to watch. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
We don't have cable.
I know that this is a sensitive topic for some, the traditional gender roles or traditional roles in marriage. I love being a homemaker and cook. I mean, I cooked and baked all day yesterday because I wanted to, like cinnamon rolls and bread and dinner and soup and all this fun stuff. It was delicious and fun. Awesome. And I love it. Like, I love serving in that fashion. That is my version of love. That's one of my love languages. It might be because I'm at least half Italian, and that's what I like is, food is my love language. But, and I don't mind cleaning. I clean a lot. I work hard. I do, physical labor. I rear our son primarily and had been when he was a baby. But I also love my professional growth and, my intellectual growth and personal growth outside of just how I can show up for others. But from a very early place in our relationship, this has never, ever been an issue for us, ever. I have to say this has been something that's just unfolded really naturally, that you've always seen that in me and not made me feel like I have to give up something to serve outside of what I'm strong at or what I enjoy doing. And even some things you've taken on more recently. Like I have 2 pet peeves about emptying or folding the clothes after they've been cleaned.
You used the word unfolding, and I just started
I don't know what it is. I have a mental block around folding clean clothes and emptying the clean dishwasher. It's like bringing it home. It's not that I can't, and I won't, and I don't.
She can't use the excuse that she can't reach, because she can.
They're on the ground.
Yeah. It's hilarious.
But there are times where that flip-flops.
But here's the funny thing. Like, I enjoy ironing clothes, and I enjoy folding clothes. Like, to me, that's my moment to meditate and just, like, let my mind wander and come up with fun ideas. Like, I do a lot of daydreaming, so that's one of my times to do it, which is so funny because you don't like doing it.
No, I just don't. And because you don't mind it, I'm happy to allow you the opportunity. But you don't love cooking as much. I mean, you do, and you serve us breakfast. And if I'm not home for... Yeah, you're the leftover king. Yeah. And, you know, like if I'm not home for dinner, you will make something and have it on the table for us. Yeah. But we don't make it a thing. Like, we just do it. We just, again, team effort. Like, our job is to make our world, our little bubble, function. Yeah. And if it's, oh, you have a late meeting, I'll take over more of this. Or you can't be there, I'll do that. Or, you know, this needs to be done and we need to work together on doing it. How can we divide and conquer? Or there's a season of, you know, there's an illness or an injury or something. And for a while, someone does all of it for a short amount of time or doing what they can, right? Yeah. Going back to seasons. Yeah. So...
Yeah, to that point, like, we are a true team, and we've learned to adapt, and, yeah, I'm very pleased with the way that we juggle it up, and there's certain things that you know I'm very strong in. Yeah. There's a lot of areas that I know that you're strong in, and when we're not we complement each other where we can. And it's just... Hey, let's get the job done. Right. With whoever's available.
Play to your strengths. Don't make it a woman, man, husband, wife thing. Don't make it a gender role. Just play to your strengths, work as a team, and don't hold that against each other, and y'all will be fine.
Agree.
That's been a good one for us.
Agree.
All right, number 9. I was touching on this earlier. Growth must be allowed and will happen at different times, not always at the same time. So we talked about, you know, improving yourself. What is that whole thing? Like, if you're not growing, you're dying. Like, there's death and stagnancy. Yeah. I think a lot of people presume that the person you marry or the life that you were in when you started your marriage, decades later, that person should be the same person. Their job should be the same. Their mindsets will be the same. No, people change. Situations change. Jobs, careers change. Like, don't ever expect, as a matter of fact, expect that you both will change over the course of your marriage, not the opposite.
Yeah. You know, it whenever one of us had, you know, like a quantum leap in growth, whether it be professionally, mentally, or emotionally, you know, that's where we actually incorporated some tension in the relationship.
It's like you see someone getting better and you're like, maybe it's our competitiveness.
Yeah, maybe.
So you're not supposed to be competitive.
But it's one of those things where realizing, okay, my spouse is growing. Fantastic for them. You know, where am I in my timeline of growth? And am I bringing my best self to the relationship, to the world that I want to live in? And if you're not where you want to be, then obviously that's where you need to show up and step up and evolve and grow at a pace that you clearly, you know, are comfortable with. Yeah. And, you know, certainly over the last, you know, 5.5 years, I feel like there has been a shift of growth between the two of us. Yeah. Like, just like, all right, we're growing. There were moments where I felt like I couldn't grow. I was stagnant and I was hitting a wall, and I just needed time. And you respected that, and you saw that. And there were some points where you're like, "Hey, hon, when are you gonna step up? When are you gonna step up?" And but it was out of love, and I knew where you were coming from. Yeah. And for me, I had to see that, all right, Chelsea's talking to me, desiring me to step up and make specific decisions around areas of our life that were very important at the time. I see where she's coming from. But fortunately, she's giving me the space to actually, get my head around it to execute.
Yeah.
And
because everyone's improvements happen in their own time. So you can't force it. You can't rush it. You can't push somebody to change.
Or make me feel less than.
Yeah.
When I haven't.
Right. Because those are the decisions you can make in that season that could have negative consequences.
But just know that it wasn't, in this particular example, like just know that it was, hey, I do desire to, level up in my decisions around the business, around our personal life, around schooling Johnny. I'm just like trying to wrap my head around like what is the best approach, for me. And so as long as the spouse in that specific scenario, is showing desire to change and is making changes, is communicating, what they're thinking about, and actually taking action in alignment with the path that both, you and I want, then that's great.
Yeah.
The minute that, hey, Chelsea's, about 5 blocks ahead of me and I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. I don't care. And I carry that attitude for a long time. There's clearly a distinction on what it is that we desire, at that point in our journey. And
subconsciously, if you ever find yourself in that situation, you could subconsciously like undermine that person's growth and almost reel them back down a little to be at your level, where you don't want to do that either. That's destructive to the process, to their process. Instead, try to think about learning new tools for you to put one foot in front of the other and to grow and to change, rather than pull them back. Try to employ new tools for you to improve so you can get on track. Because it will happen sometimes out of sequence with each other, but where can we support that person and cheer them on? I mean, that's been a huge, anytime we go through growth and, we have always helped each other. For
my business,
yeah, that's what I mean. It hasn't always been, and I've had seasons of grief where you had to hold space and just let me get through my loss and my healing and employ the tools, and you were observing it and you were giving it time and space and lending an ear when necessary, but allowed me the time to get through that while you were good. You held that space. But even in like positive times when you're working hard towards a goal, starting your business or leveling up your business, don't pull that person back in, rise to the occasion and support them and show up in the best way you can. Like give fuel to that fire instead of saying, oh no, you got to stay down here with me. Yeah. It just doesn't. No one grows in that situation, and it's destructive. So that's kind of a thing that you got to look out for. But know that the person that you first married is not going to be the same person, and get to know each other again and again and again. And that leads us actually into our last one.
Yeah, good one.
That we're talking about intimacy.
Ooh la la.
We're not bearing all. It's not that kind of video. But dreaming of your future together, dreaming is a form of intimacy, along with a few others we're going to name that will help support the bond and support your intimacy. So this is like the big bonus at the end of this video. You've reached it. Thank you for listening as long as you have. Now you get to hear the good stuff. Just kidding. It's
Juicy.
All good. But how many times do you feel connected with your partner when you're planning or even just dreaming of a future together, right? When you can see your future in your partner's eyes, like there's a form of trust there. Oh, they want me in their future. They want me to be a part of whatever they have going on next. And that bond is really helps bond you and strengthen you. Yes, there's your physical intimacy that is extremely important, and that's like a whole nother episode in of itself if we're ever wanting to talk more deeply about that. And you have to have that, but the physical intimacy is going to ebb and flow. Like you're not always going to have time to have emotions, to be present, to show up physically, for so many reasons, like childbirth and raising young children and illness, grief, professional commitments, just being on and doing the deal, aging family, and other, caretaking commitments, and a multitude of other things I'm sure you all are aware of. So how can you retain a sense of intimacy and bond that, again, is part of what you build in that foundation with the healthy communication, the emotional, EQ, emotional intelligence, personal growth. I said communication skills. I'll say it again. It's super important. But like, what are those foundational things that help bridge the gap from the peaks to the valleys, right? Like, where does that come in? And having a form of intimacy where you sit down and you dream. Some of our dreams haven't even materialized. I mean, sometimes maybe they'll just always be dreams, right? Like we're big dreamers.
Yeah. But think back to when it was early in our marriage or when we were dating, when we actually took note of like our ideal day.
We were dating.
It was our ideal day.
The perfect day.
The perfect day. That's what it was. Yeah. And I have to say, how amazing was it that we both described the same perfect day.
And we didn't tell each other.
We didn't tell each other until we shared our story of what our perfect day was. And it was practically the same.
That was a really cool moment.
That was awesome. Was awesome. And we actually did enjoy that perfect day.
We did.
Wasn't that amazing?
We did. A few times over, haven't we?
Yeah, it's happened a few times, which is great.
But it has. And both of our perfect days included each other.
It did.
And it was actually probably the first thing that we did to kind of gain a vision for our relationship that stuck with us.
Yeah.
And now it's like so commonplace. We'll talk about where we're going to move and where we're going to do this and where we're going to travel and what are these things that we're doing. And also sometimes that positivity that you focus on together, that you kind of get on the same page with and you feed that positive energy, can actually manifest some of those dreams. We've had so many of our dreams manifest just from talking about it, getting excited about it,
Absolutely.
Loosely planning for it, wanting to see it happen. And then when the timing was right and it happened, we're like, oh my God, like we did it, right? But like, that's a huge bond that helps us continue to know, like, yeah, I got you in my plans for my future. And you got me in your plans. And most of those plans, include each other in some way.
Well, it's so validating to know that, we want to be together. Like these are dreams that we want to have, that we want to experience. And so, when we continue to think about specific, fun, adventurous goals that we want to have and see that, hey, we're both in those visions, that's a very good feeling.
Yeah. And dreaming together or sharing visions together is a form of vulnerability. And that also, when you're vulnerable and you're real with somebody and you share what's in your heart, you create a stronger bond, right? So it's not just, and that makes the physical intimacy that even much better, that much more empowering and intimate, meaningful. That was the word I was looking for. And what have we done in the last few years that really was another foundational thing that, we've always kind of been adventurous, but the last couple years we've invested in an RV and traveled around the country for 3 months at a clip. And we were challenging ourselves to a brand new experience. We've camped before, but we've never owned an RV. We've never taken care of it. We've never had a plan for the trip and how to go. And they always say traveling together, regardless of the mode of travel, it can be a make or break of a relationship, because you get to see someone in a more vulnerable state. How do they plan for things? How do they deal with the unexpected? How do they handle stress and an unknown location or a foreign circumstance that, you have to overcome? We've done that a lot in our dating life and in our early marriage, but now we're also bringing our son into the mix and we're traveling with him and he's observing how we have these new adventures and these new experiences. And so even though that person and you want to create intimacy, there's always new opportunities to have new experiences together, to bond together in new ways and challenge yourself to work as a team to get through something new. And that helps strengthen that bond. Oh my goodness. Come here, Jenny.
He's got chocolate all over.
Look at this pudding face. It's okay. As we say. There he is. There's our dude.
We love bonding together.
We love bonding. So, anywho, that is a big part of how we create intimacy in our marriage outside of the physical intimacy when sometimes you're in a season. Again, we talk about seasons. Just remember that they're seasons and that they will pass. But those actions you take in those seasons or around those seasons and the way you consciously create a bond matters to the whole family.
Yeah. It's really because they're watching.
They are watching.
They're watching.
Anyway.
Well, thank you for listening and joining us for our top 10 things that we learned over the last 10 years of marriage.
Yes, please follow along. Subscribe to our email newsletter to get the most recent Bonding Over Bacon drops. And if you have any comments or feedback on the lessons you've learned over the course of your marriage, please feel free to comment on the post below. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
So thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Look forward to bonding with you.
Bye.
Bye.